Welcome back to the FM Realty Report podcast. And on today's episode, we'll be talking about what consumers should be expecting when working with realtors and some of the new changes that NAR has published. And hello, Don.
Hey, how you doing, Roman?
Good. How are you?
This is good. We're looking forward again to helping our consumers and educating our consumers. And this won't be the only time that we talk about this, but we think it's important in today's market where there's such a shortage of inventory and things are selling fast and prices are going up, that consumers, both buyers and sellers, truly understand how to work with a realtor and what that means. First and foremost, we all know that in any real estate transaction, there's a ton of paperwork. Oh, yeah. It gets crazy. And we all have to understand, both realtors and consumers, that we have to sign contracts with each other. And that's in everybody's best interest. We'll get into that a little bit. Mm-hmm. But there's also a variety of forms that we need so we can collect the information about the property from the seller so that we can give it to the buyer. We also have mandatory forms, such as an agency disclosure form. And an agency disclosure form is required to be presented to all consumers at the first substantive contact. That lets that consumer know who's working for them. Mm-hmm. And really what that means. It's a very important form.
And that is a New York State law.
That's a New York State law. In addition, at the same time, we have to present a fair housing disclosure to make sure that the consumer understands that realtors do not discriminate. Mm-hmm. And there's information on that form that if a consumer feels they're being discriminated against, there's a New York State contact number to go to. Mm-hmm. So these are important pieces of information. So I know it gets a little intimidating sometime when you sit down and you have all these paperwork, but it is important. You had mentioned some new policies, and there are some new policies by NAR. NAR stands for the National Association of Realtors. And we, as a local marketplace here, agree to follow National Association of Realtor rules in our MLS. And there's a few things that have changed recently that are very significant. If you're a buyer today, this has to be happening. If it's not happening, you better talk to your realtor about it. We as realtors are required to have a buyer sign a written agreement before we tour a property. Mm-hmm. So any buyer who wants to look at property, you're either going to have to sign a contract with that buyer, and in that contract, we're required to tell you what the fee is, how much it is, when it's going to get paid. This is a requirement of us as realtors. Now, you may not want to fall into a long-term contract right away. You can sign a contract for showing a house. That's between you and your realtor how you're going to figure it out. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to sign a contract, there still has to be a written agreement where that realtor discloses that mandatory information to you. So be aware as a buyer that now, with the new policy out there, we have to have a written agreement before we show you the property. And that's a change. Mm-hmm. And some buyers say, what?
Yeah.
But that's what it is.
And don't get, to buyers, to consumers, don't get scared or when you hear the word contract. Like you said, it could just be a timeline can be put on that.
Absolutely.
And you get full disclosure what's required by law for the realtors to disclose to them. Even if they in the future say don't end up working with you, at least they'll be aware of that knowledge.
Absolutely.
Or they might come across a realtor who wasn't doing their due diligence, and they're going to say, you know what, Roman or Don were out front and
due diligence.
Thank you. What a tongue twister. And might think, I want to go back and work with them because I feel like there was honesty and they informed me of all the fees and everything that I should be aware of.
And this also benefits sellers because it strengthens the communication between a realtor and a buyer consumer. And that seller can have the confidence that realtor does have some information about that buyer. Mm-hmm. Like at least has their name, at mm-hmm. least has some address, at least has some contact information. So it depends exactly how individual brokerages do that. Some do it different ways, but you must have we as realtors must have a written agreement before we tour the house. There's another policy that is, I think, one of the best things that we've done in a long time, and it's called clear cooperation. And what that requires us as realtors to do is to, when we sign an agreement with the seller, if we do any public marketing of that property on behalf of the seller, putting a sign up, going on social media, we must have that in the multiple listing service within 24 hours of starting any public marketing. And that again benefits the seller. The importance as well as the buyer. The buyer now knows what inventory is on the marketplace, and the seller now has their property exposed through the multiple listing service. And let's talk about that for a second. There are many ways to market a property. Let's talk about two. One is putting your property in the multiple listing service. We are huge proponents in FM Realty Group of the multiple listing service for 99.9% of all properties that we bring to the marketplace, especially in a market where we have tight inventory. Your seller wants that property exposed and should expect that property to be exposed to the greatest number of people. Mm-hmm. We know that many houses are selling over list price. If you don't have your property as a seller in the multiple listing service, you're not getting the exposure. The second way is something called an office exclusive. And an office exclusive is a listing where it doesn't go into the MLS. It doesn't do any public marketing. It just stays within the brokerage, within the company, mm-hmm. and within the company's contacts. There may be occasional reasons to do that. One comes to mind. Maybe you're a movie star or a high sports figure and you want a little bit more privacy and the actual bottom dollar doesn't matter as much to you. Okay, fine. We have a process for that. In 99.9% of all other cases, I don't think I can ever come across a seller in my many years in the business that didn't want to receive the highest possible price for their house. And that's not going to be achieved if it's in the MLS. So as a seller, you need to speak to your realtor if they're talking to you about an office exclusive and see why and see if what they're proposing is in your best interest. We also have a new rule coming up. It'll be in place by the end of September. And that will be another form, another piece of paperwork that a realtor is going to have to present to you, clearly disclosing to you the benefits of the MLS, clearly disclosing to you why that is in your best interest, so that if you decide to go another route, you at least know what you're giving up.
Mm-hmm. And all this paperwork should not scare a consumer. Yeah, it seems like a lot, but you have to understand, if a realtor is conducting business with you and does not have all this paperwork, then you kind of have to question it. Are they following all the rules, mm-hmm. laws?
Yep.
And should you be worried because a lack of information could lead to maybe not selling a house fast enough?
Correct.
Maybe not getting the highest possible price.
Absolutely.
So don't get discouraged or scared of all this paperwork. It just means that all this paperwork in place is just all the ways the state is looking to protect you as a consumer, and just creates more work for us as realtors.
Absolutely. And that brings up a very good point that we at FM Realty Group feel very strongly about. When we take on a client, it's a team. Mm-hmm. We're working together. And we have to explain everything we're doing, and if you don't understand it, we're not doing our job. So we take that very, very seriously. We make sure that our clients understand exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it. I referred earlier to the New York State Required Agency Disclosure Form. We are required by law, whether you're a buyer or seller, whether you're a client or a customer is somebody that a realtor might be working with but not for, we are required to disclose anything that we know that may materially affect that property or its desirability. Mm-hmm. Now let's think about that for a second. There are obviously things we don't know, but as you alluded to, Roman, the more paperwork that we explain to you and the more information that we get if we're representing you as a seller, gives us that possibility, or gives us the information that we need to fully disclose. So disclosure, disclosure, disclosure are bywords in this industry as a licensee, as a realtor.
Yes. And certain things that clients share with us, it is confidential to stay with us.
Absolutely.
And
in that same agency disclosure form, it explains to you that if you're my client, whatever you want me to keep confidential, I, by law, must keep that confidential. And there are what we call 6 fiduciary duties. We won't get into all of them now, but one of them is confidentiality. And the one thing about confidentiality that's different from the other fiduciary duties is it lasts forever.
I was going to say to the grave.
To the grave, absolutely. So hopefully what we're doing and what we want to accomplish in part in our podcast is to continue these educational processes so that our consumers understand what it means to work with us as realtors. But most importantly, we know that consumers, sellers want to get the best price and the best terms they possibly can. Buyers want to get the best price and the best terms they possibly can. And if we don't have that team relationship and we don't share the information that we need, knowing that some of it can be confidential, we're going to have a problem. And we don't want problems. And we want our consumers to move into their homes and be as happy as they possibly can. We want our sellers to be happy with the results of their sale so that they can move on, hopefully, with other real estate needs.
Yeah. May I touch on something about MLS?
Sure.
So you said the listing has to go up within 24 hours. Within 24 hours of signed contract?
Within 24 hours of any public marketing.
Okay.
And public marketing can be the old-fashioned newspapers. It can be radio. It can be television. But it can also be putting a sign in the front yard. That's public marketing. Posting the house on Facebook. That's public marketing. So if you've got your home on the market with a realtor and they're doing Facebook posts, they're doing Instagram notices, they're doing all kinds of social media, there's a sign in the front yard, we are required to have that in the multiple listing service within 24 hours. And we want our sellers to think about why that really is. When there is no inventory or very little inventory and you're a buyer and you're working with a realtor whose job it is, their legal duty, to do the best they can to help them find a property, but individual brokerages are keeping listings in-house, how can that buyer have the exposure to the inventory that they need? It's tough to be a buyer. But the most important thing from a seller's point of view, if you don't care about buyers having availability of inventory, I'm sure you care about how much money you're going to make. And if you're not exposed to the MLS, you're leaving money on the table.
And I just want to give a couple examples.
Sure.
I've had instances where clients reached out to me and said, I just saw a property for sale. It's at this and this address. And I would go on MLS and it's not there.
Yep.
And that's frustrating.
Yep.
And another thing I find a lot of happening where it's not on MLS is commercial properties.
Right.
And I wanted to ask you about this. Do you feel like when you hear about properties being for sale but not on MLS, even though they are publicly, like with a sign out front, marketed, do you feel like it's primarily commercial or it's about an even mix of commercial and the residential?
I think you have to differentiate. Many commercial brokerages are not members of the multiple listing service.
Okay.
So they have different rules. If, in fact, you're a brokerage and you're a member of the MLS and you have a commercial listing, the same rule applies.
Okay.
So you talk about some of the larger commercial brokerages in town, most of them are not members of the MLS. However, we as licensees in New York State must cooperate by law. And cooperation means that if you have an exclusive listing, you're not a member of the MLS, and another licensee calls you up and wants information, wants to show the property, wants to present an offer, you must allow that to happen. That's called cooperation, and that's required by New York state law.
Oh, okay. So that's a law. So if I reach out to them and I'm not part of the company, they are required by law to share the information.
Correct.
And what's preventing them from not doing business with me?
The Department of State.
Okay. just wanted to kind of play a little bit of a devil's advocate here.
But again, we find, and as I mentioned before, I've been in the business for many decades, and the number of times that we really have difficulties are few. And I think part of that is, in our case here at FM Realty, we really take our legal responsibilities to heart, and we really want to work on that team concept. We need to work with you as a seller. We need to work with you as a buyer. You need to work with us. We have to be open. We have to be fully transparent with each other so that we can accomplish the goals. And when we work together as a team, things go faster and the goals are accomplished.
Mm-hmm. You don't go see your doctor and not give all information.
That's right.
So
exactly right.
If you want the best service from us, the transparency is important.
Absolutely.
And just remember, we are by law required for that confidentiality, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
And there were some documents that have been released. Do we need to touch on that? Or?
Well, I'll just quickly go through things. When you work with a buyer or a seller, we as realtors have, as we've said, a ream of paperwork that we have to go through. As I said, the first thing, even before a contract, even before you start talking about what your wants, needs, and desires are, we as realtors and as licensees in New York State must present you with an agency disclosure. We must present you with a fair housing statement. Mm-hmm. We also need to make it very clear to you what our contractual obligations are, and we have to use the forms that are required by the state. Lead-based paint addendum is one that comes to mind, as well as the fair housing, as well as the agency disclosure. And there will be the contract. There's a contract to establish a contractual relationship between us and our buyers and us and our sellers.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, that's the order I have them organize in my folder when I go to see my clients.
That's it.
I just kind of pre-organize my paperwork step by step. So when I arrive, I'm not shuffling through paperwork.
Right.
Just another small step to look more professional in
Absolutely.
your client's eyes.
Absolutely.
And was there a change to property condition disclosure?
Yeah, there was just a recent change to the property condition disclosure, which is a required state form where the seller discloses, it's 8 pages, 7 pages, where the seller discloses what they know about the property. It's not a warranty, it's not a guarantee, but a seller is responsible to fill that out. And there's a lot of information on that form, and that's important because buyers want to know that information. There was just an addition and an expansion of that form around flood insurance.
Okay.
And floodplains. Is the property in floodplain? Do you have flood insurance? So that was added.
Mm-hmm. And when the owner does not know, are we as realtors allowed to provide owners with some kind of resource?
Yeah.
So that if they say, I don't know if it is, well, check this website out and you'll be able to.
Absolutely. We often call ourselves, we can't get information for you, but we can be the source to the source.
Yeah. I'll direct you to the door, you open it.
Correct. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Got it. And that's important because I'm always not worried, but I'm always conscious of the information I provide to my clients.
Right.
And I'm constantly thinking of well, don't just say this is what you should do.
Right.
Or don't even say that, but say here's where you can get the information.
Correct.
And there are other situations where we are required to say this is what it is.
Correct.
That's just our job.
Yep.
But other things, when they ask for advice, opinion, things of that nature, I try to just more direct.
Right. We have a saying here, we do not make decisions for our clients. Mm-hmm. We advise them. We give them as much information as we can, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. Mm-hmm. I may tell you what we're required to do, you or me, by law, but I'm not going to tell you which house to buy, and I'm not going to tell you what the final price you have to take. That's your decision. So we're going to give you the information so that you can make an informed decision that meets your needs.
One of my favorite phrases that was taught to me by you when I was in school in ethics is when you state something or you suggest something, you always follow up. However,
that's an important, yeah.
It's like it has become my staple. I always say that. However, refer to this document, refer to this website. I often people say, well, what do you think? Because of my construction background,
sure.
And I explain my credentials, and they say, well, what do you think, Roman? And I could say, that roof looks really good. However, get it inspected.
Yes. Absolutely. No,
and then that's up to them from there.
It's up to them.
Yeah.
And there's a very important reason for that. We are responsible for what we say by law as licensees. So if we give our opinion, it's our opinion. And we're going to tell you it's our opinion. And I will say that in many, many cases, if not the vast majority of the cases, our opinions in the final analysis are correct. We've been doing this for a long time. We have a wealth of information, and our opinions have real value.
Yeah.
However, as we say, it's important to make your own decision. It's important that you don't make decisions based on our opinion. Make decisions based on fact.
Yeah. And the example I brought up, even with 23 some years of my experience in construction industry, I can clearly look and say that those shingles are probably 2-3 years old, and I would still insist, and say,
absolutely.
However, and they can choose not to.
Sure, absolutely.
I did my part, and
absolutely.
To any realtor, this also I've learned from you, Don. Try to immediately after your conversation or your meeting with the client, just quickly summarize what you guys had talked about and send a written email, text, whatever.
Absolutely.
Something in writing. It's just another way to make sure that there's no miscommunication.
Miscommunication is just the bane of our business. Yeah. And putting things in writing and going home at night and sending a client a text saying, geez, we decided to do this, is an important step because miscommunication happens. And that written correspondence of whatever kind gives all of us the opportunity to make sure that we were clearly understood. Yeah, that's a great point, Roman.
Yes. And for the next episode, Don, what are we going to talk about on
the next episode? We're excited about. Recently, just last week, the National Association of Realtors and their chief economist and staff put out a national forecast, an economic forecast around housing. And it is amazing what's going on around the country in housing. And we also, through our National Association of Realtors, have in this vast nationwide economic forecast, we have the ability to drill down to our own local marketplace and see how that is the same or different from the national picture. We all know there's this basic truth in the business. All real estate is local. So we will give you the trends of what's going on around the country, and it's interesting, but we'll also drill down to what's going on here in Central New York.
Well, with that, thank you for listening to the FM Realty Report, and please follow us on social media. Find our podcast on all your podcast favorite platforms, and if you would like to get in touch with Don or myself, find our contact information in the description. Thank you.